Hey, welcome to the Maffman Jones spoiler podcast for Marvel Studios Civil War. We are doing this live from Comic Book Jones, and also if you're watching this on SoundCloud afterwards, then awesome. I'm John Maffeo of Maffman Jones Movie Reviews.
I'm John Ryan Anderson of The Comic Look.
And I'm Mike Potenza of the Clever Conceptions channel.
And
yes,
applause.
Thank you.
It always feels good to have support.
Pause for applause.
And screams. But so I just want to really quickly, I want to thank everybody for coming out. This is really awesome. I'm getting chills right now. And I want to thank Comic Book Jones for allowing us to do this, because this is really cool to be doing this in person with a bunch of other people. It's cool to have interactions with a bunch of people. It's really cool. I'm also really nervous. I don't know if you can tell.
I don't know if you guys can't see it, but there's a dog in the store. I'm really curious to see what he has to say about the movie.
Team Cap or Team Iron Man?
I'm just happy it's a dog.
But yes, first we're going to start off. If you haven't seen Civil War, if you're watching this at home or you're watching this live, we're going to talk about really quickly what we thought of the movie generally, without getting into the nitty-gritties. I guess I'll start first really quick. If you didn't see my review, I gave it a 5 out of 5, and I don't give movies 5 out of 5s often, or I try not to because I have a personal bias with big movies, but it was a really well-done blockbuster. It had a lot of the capabilities a blockbuster should have. It had heart, it had action, it had comedy. The levity of everything balanced out really well. It was directed really well. And you could, it does help if you watch the previous movies, I think, but you could go into this blind, like a casual viewer, and still enjoy it a lot. And I think there was the most emotion in any Marvel movie that I've seen in any of them, besides maybe the first Iron Man. But I would say that it's a great movie, and it's going to be in the top 5 of Marvel movies at the end when all is said and done. What do you guys think? Starting with whoever wants to start first. Don't fight, though.
Alright, so I gave Civil War a marvelous, a very fun comic book movie. Is there flaws? Yes. Not as bad as another Versus movie that came out earlier in the year, as we'll touch on a little bit, just a little bit, or have touched on. Actually, if you guys want, you could check out. We did a whole spoiler podcast on Batman vs. Superman. So definitely check that out on John's SoundCloud account. But as I was saying, it's kind of just a great time at the movies. It's really fun. And there's a lot of comedy in it, but there's also a lot of drama. And you would think a movie with all these different characters would be very exhausting and cluttered, but I think it moves very smoothly for all the things that are going on. Yes.
Yeah, well, like I said, when you go to see a Marvel movie, you're expecting it to be fun, more so than Batman vs. Superman, which, DC doesn't really aim for fun. It aims for more emotional weight. However, that being said, this movie managed to strike a balance between fun, which it was fun. It was a lot of fun, more fun than probably any Marvel movie since Guardians of the Galaxy. But it also had emotional weight to it, and I think that's important, and that it really shines in the Russo brothers' writing. I think that the movie was phenomenal. I would say that it's the second best Marvel movie to date, objectively. That's up to you, but in my opinion, it's the second best to date. The first being Winter Soldier, and the Winter Soldier is really hard to match, but I think it's a close second. John grades on a scale of 1 to 5, but I grade on 1 to 10 because I like to give it that leverage. Definitely a solid 9 out of 10, even on that. Great cast of characters, great acting. I think we'll really get into that as we go on. So.
Yeah, I think, it's fine. It's really hard to talk about movies like this without getting into spoilers, and this is, in fact, the spoiler podcast.
So if you have not seen Civil War and you don't want it spoiled for you, now would be a really good time to stop listening.
Put on your earplugs. You could jump into space, or you could start, you could read comics too. At Comic Book Jones.
Yeah, it's actually half off tonight, every Wednesday. Half off.
That's an awesome deal.
Oh, 10% off. I'm sorry. I'm being corrupted by the match.
I don't want to mess that up.
So 10% off comics. And that's it, though. We're going to get into it now. So this is your warning. You have 2 or 3 seconds. Otherwise, you can still see the movie and enjoy it even with spoilers having been seen. But we're going to get into it, starting with Team Iron Man What side are you on, and why?
I'm Team Iron Man, which is the minority, but
Go ahead.
yeah. So I think that we see we've dealt with the character of Tony Stark since 2008 when the first Iron Man came out, and we've seen him undergo something of a metamorphosis throughout a very very long character arc. What is it, an 8-year character arc? At the beginning of the series, we see him as sort of this conglomerate, like what is that? He like kind of epitomizes like war profiteering and and through extension war itself. Now, after the situation in the first Iron Man, he then starts to feel guilty about the situations that his weapons have created, becomes Iron Man, and starts to advocate for world peace and clean energy. However, despite the best of intentions, he tends to still create a lot of catalytic events that tend to become world-threatening or kill people and hurt people. And I think that the weight of that emotion is starting to finally culminate into this sort of sense of responsibility, where he realizes that when left to his own devices, despite the best of intentions, he still ends up inadvertently hurting people. And he realizes that if left unchecked, it becomes something of sort of anarchy in a situation where, you can argue that anarchy is freedom, but then that makes him no better than the villains that he's destroying. And so I sort of commiserate with that sort of character drive, more so than Captain America, who, despite also having the best of intentions, is operating in a way that doesn't serve that the people do not agree with.
Mm-hmm. And you, John?
Based on my blue blazer, I am Team Cap. All great points, Mike. The reason I would agree. I would agree too. But that's the great thing about this movie is that you see both sides very clearly, and that gives, again, giving credits to the Russo brothers for establishing that. But the main reason I'm Team Cap is kind of the Superman argument from Man of Steel. Is Superman's fighting a god, hence Metropolis gets destroyed in essence. And when you're a superhero team going against aliens and robots that could potentially destroy the Earth as we know it, and thousands of people die versus everybody on the planet, I think that's the side that Cap feels. And I think the movie never really addressed that aspect of it. I think they kind of touched on it, but I would have liked Cap saying, like, hey, if we didn't intervene, then everybody would be dead.
He says it.
Yeah, he does. But it's just, that's the main reason I side with him, because I believe that I'd rather somebody, save the world than let the world, or as in the Avengers, you had the government wanting to nuke New York, and I just can't really factor that.
Given the Sokovia Accords, if they would have let them go through everybody, like that nuke would have probably destroyed New York City if it's taken place during the Avengers time. But I'm also Team Captain America, and that's probably because I love the bromance between Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers. I don't think there's anything quite like it. That metal arm. Nothing. No. Your mind's in the gutter. But I do see where Captain America sides in this movie, because they do set up well in Winter Soldier with the government, and everything was about distrust in the Winter Soldier, and given everything he's been through in that movie, you see why he would be opposed to their side. Although I do see from Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark's perspective, they do a really good job of making you conflicted in your mind what side you would stand on, because Robert Downey Jr.'s performance is so strong in that movie that you can't help but be like, yeah, I don't like you, but I agree with you. But I do think in the end, if I had to choose a side, I think I would choose Captain America, because I think his team's better, besides Spider-Man. And I do think that in the end, he has more clear motives than Tony Stark does. Tony Stark's evolution as a character has been much more refined than Steve Rogers over the past few years since we've started these movies.
Yeah, he's definitely changed because that was the biggest concern I had going into this movie, is how is Iron Man, a guy who's full of rebellion, now wants to be controlled in a sense by the government. And given the past couple of films, we see that he's evolved as a character in that sense, where Ultron was ultimately his fault. So he feels responsible, and there's that growth.
And on top of that, the breaking up with Pepper Potts and the woman who talked to him about her son being murdered in Sokovia, and all these things just like literally just like weighing him down in his mind. Like when he was quiet in the room with William Hurt, General Ross, like when he was in the back of the room just sitting there, just like twiddling his fingers and doing whatever. Like it shows a lot because he's such a loudmouth in these movies that to see him in the corner just being really quiet, it's really powerful, especially if you've been watching all these movies.
Also, he's always been a character that's motivated by guilt. In the first
Like
Iron
Spider-Man.
Man, yeah, right. But in the first Iron Man, you know, they have the scene. I love the first Iron Man, by the way. It's one of my favorites. But they have the scene in the you know, the Humvee, and you know, the guy puts up, you know, the peace sign, and he's like, oh, peace, you know, I'd be out of the job of peace. And then, you know, for the rest of the series, for the rest of the universe, he starts throwing up that symbol all the time. That shows that now he's realizing that it's his fault that these soldiers have died, the men who wanted peace, you know, good men. So he starts advocating for peace. Again, motivating guilt for his own weapons is why he built the Iron Man suit, why he goes after his own weapons. It's all cleanup of motivated by his own guilt, and he's always been in that situation, despite the fact that he hasn't always voiced it.
Mm-hmm.
At the time where he was disagreeing with the government in Iron Man 2, when he was at odds with them, he believed that the government could be trusted and that he could, because when you trust the government with something as powerful as the Iron Man suit, it can be very dangerous. He's trying to keep people safe, and because he's the way he is, and he's a very ostentatious man, you know, it borders on, you know, arrogance and not like being obnoxious. But that's, you know, it's all very calculated decisions that are motivated by guilt. So, you know, it's not out of the realm of realism that at this point, after everything that has happened, he's realized that maybe he doesn't know what's best.
Yeah,
and someone else might.
Especially that, like, again, one of the biggest blows in the movie, like his motivations have been totally like shifted when he sees the videotape that showcases the really brutal death of Mrs. and Mr. Stark.
Well, at that point, I think they sort of lead up to, in the movie, they start to there's an interaction between Tony Stark and Black Widow, where she asks him if he's capable of throwing his ego aside for like 1 second, and he's you know. And throughout the show, throughout the movie universe, he has not been able to do that. However, when he sees the videotape of Bucky killing his parents, through extension, he throws his ego away, and that's when he's most dangerous. Which is what starts to come to light is that final climactic is how dangerous he can be without his ego. It's just visceral rage, and it's very impactful, you know, on the plot of it.
And I'll speak briefly about that scene in general. Starts off the film, and it's a huge indicator that this is a big deal, which I knew right off the bat. You're watching that scene, and you're like, who's in this car? Obviously, it's going to be somebody big. And I'm watching it, and it kind of, after watching it a number of times, you see all the hints, and it's very clear. But I think I didn't see it coming until the second they started rolling.
Yeah, I agreed. Like, I had no idea. Like, when it does happen, like, you're like, oh, yeah. But, like, as they do a good job of setting up where you don't exactly know it's big enough, but it's also give enough information that you could, if you're smart enough, like, understand what actually happens in there.
You know what it is? I watched, I marathoned, like, all of the Marvel movies right before seeing Civil War, and remembered, because it was fresh in my head, that the parents died in a car accident, because they say
it's a car accident?
Yeah, they say in Iron Man 1, they died in a car accident. They say in Iron Man 2, they touch on it very briefly. And then in Winter Soldier, they show the flashing of the newspaper that the Stark's parents killing in the car accident was the work of...
do happen.
So I kind of knew what it was going to be, and I kind of figured where the plot was going on that. But you know, it was still really, really, it was still very nice to. It was nice to see that culmination of years of emotion, just kind of like.
Well, I'm glad they didn't shy away from the brutality of it. Like to see the Winter Soldier just punch John Slattery in the face like 2 times, like the way with that. Like I don't. They don't do that much in these movies. Like they try to keep it lighthearted for the kids, the families, blah, you know, the whole ordeal. But like when it does a good. Like they do a good job of like bringing again with the levity, the comedy, the humor, the action, the drama. Like it does. You feel the impact when you see his parents getting like choked and like punched in the face.
It's pretty.
It's very visceral.
I really like how the trigger words are very generic, and you have one trigger word. Yeah, it's generic, I guess you could say. But
everyone's trigger words are like that.
Homecoming, fright car, something.
Yeah.
7.
Homecoming, though, specifically, really, I was like, oh, well, that's the next Spider-Man film.
Was that done on purpose?
That seems very specific, and I think it was.
Didn't Bucky fall out of the freight car?
He did. When Captain America won.
That makes sense. And I guess they had Homecomings back in the 90s. I wasn't around for them. So I think they were.
I think that those words, you know, they don't really go very far to sort of explain it. But I think that those words have some kind of trigger some kind of emotional response in him from something that he has actually experienced, like the freight car.
Sure.
You know,
but you don't think they just took like a wheel of fortune and just threw darts at the wall?
I think
Homecoming.
Right. So I think that somehow the hypnotherapy that he's gone through sort of, you know, is triggered by some kind of emotion inside that corresponds to an actual memory. And I don't know the exact science behind it, and they didn't really elaborate on it in the film.
I guess you don't have to. You don't have to elaborate on everything in these movies.
No, you don't, and it really didn't need to be explained. So but it was good.
But then we've been talking about Tony Stark's motivations in this movie, and then like on opposed to that, where he has a more logical sense of motivation, Bucky Barnes, Steve Rogers' motivation is clearly just to save his best friend, because like he's been through so much with his along with the government, but like the big personal emotional motivation here is that he doesn't want his friend Bucky to be harmed or in like the worst case killed. So that seemed like in the beginning where they killed Crossbones. And like he talks about Bucky, and he talks about to Wanda how like he was transported. He was like that 16-year-old kid in Brooklyn again when he heard the name Bucky.
I think that both characters, both of them, the central combatants, Iron Man and Captain America, both have layers of emotional weight that feeds into the conflict. One is just their base ideology. Captain America believes in freedom, no matter what. Iron Man believes in structure, in calculated structure. That's just one ideology. You know, Captain America always believes in taking the straight path. Iron Man has always tried to find the wisest. That's just one thing. That's fundamental at their core. Now, the second thing is that Iron Man is motivated by, one, the fact that the Sokovia Accords is his way of reconciling the fact that he, as a person, is incapable of stopping being Iron Man, of being, Iron Man. And by doing so, his inability to stop pushed the Pepper out of his life, and ultimately, that emotional pain, motivated him to use the Sokovia Accords, because it's sort of like a middle ground. It's not him just marauding now; it's him working for the government.
Mm-hmm. By the way, do you think it's okay that they didn't bring Gwyneth Paltrow into this movie? That they just used dialogue and visual cues to give you the idea of what happened between them? It's
not ideal, but sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to recast people too, like Don Cheadle.
I would argue Don Cheadle's better than Terrence Howard.
Of course he is, but
as War Machine.
I agree.
I think it would have slowed down the film if we had like another scene where we see them breaking up. I don't think it was necessary. I think it's good that it was applied, because though the film is very good as a whole, I feel that the first act has a lot going on and it's a little slow. It's not terrible by any means, but after repeat viewings and anticipating that middle fight,
the 20-minute fight, that's what we're into.
Definitely. But especially the second time I watched it, I was anticipating that fight. I kind of wanted this Sokovia Accord stuff to be hard and get to that fight. But after watching it a third time, you see like, oh, everything here is essentially. But again, you don't need them really see them break up.
Right, and getting back on my train of thought there. So besides the breakup, is part of a motivating factor. Guilt is part of the motivating factor, and fundamentally, who he is as a person is a motivating factor. Now, for Rogers, it's sort of the other side of the coin, where he's motivated not only by the fact that he cares about his friend, but also the fact that he had to reconcile the loss of Peggy Carter, who passes away in the film, and then at the funeral, her niece, Sharon Carter speaks.
Agent 13.
Who is Agent 13, Winter Soldier, and come to see that it is, that she's Sharon Carter, and she speaks and says, that Peggy always believed that no matter what everyone else around you is telling you, if you feel something is right, you have to take the bull by the horns, and you have to say no, stand your ground, and that love ideology, protecting his friend and who he is as a person, also just drives his character, and that those two, unstoppable forces, those two conflicting ideologies, when they hit, that's when the fighting starts.
And I think that scene is very pivotal for Cap, because that eulogy, like the only reason you have that scene is for Cap to get that eulogy, and he understands that he has to stand his ground and not submit to the Accords. Which, again, do you need the death of Peggy Carter? Not really, but it does move the plot. So I see why it's essential.
It also helps us because she was one of the only things in his life, or maybe the only thing in his life, that was keeping him sane since he was this man at a time. But the fact is, he says in the dialogue, she was the only thing I had left. It was just nice to have her around. So the fact that she's gone now, it's like one piece of him that's already gone now.
It was also his last connection to the era in which he lived. I think that her death, I would argue that her death is intrinsic to the plot and definitely needed to be there to push the plot forward to where it needed to go.
I don't know what else you could have really done with her character in the modern day anyway. She had Alzheimer's, she was in bed, she was in the hospital. What more could you have really done with her?
She was there as sort of just like a fleeting a fleeting memory of a time long gone. And the fact that she had Alzheimer's illustrated the fact that that memory was fading, literally. So that again, it's and then her passing just means that's closure. That time has passed, and now it's time to live now, and now he needs to fight for the freedom he believes in.
Yeah.
That the freedom that she believed in, that he believes in, that S.H.I.E.L.D. was founded on, that of the era that he fought for.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of death, segueing into a new character in the Marvel movie series now, we also had another death, and that was the death of, I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, T'Chaka?
T'Chaka.
King T'Chaka, which then in turn brings us to Black Panther T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, who is arguably one of the best things about this whole movie. Whether you know the character or not, they come in strong. They don't really explain the suit or anything, but the way he makes an entrance in this movie is so, I don't know what's the word for it. It's subtle, but it's also in a way very visually powerful.
Yeah. So
got cookies.
So you just brought in cookies. So T'Chaka is great because to be an Avenger in the setting of the Avengers in the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's sort of fundamental to have something to avenge, and he did. He had something to avenge. But the difference between to avenge versus revenge, that's a distinction that this movie made clear. So throughout the movie, Baron Zemo, who is the villain of the movie, frames Bucky Barnes for bombing the Vienna conference. Black Panther or T'Chaka loses his father, who is the king of Wakanda, and then he swears to get vengeance on Bucky for killing his father, and then throughout the movie, he finds out that it wasn't Bucky, and that he almost killed the wrong man, and then he finally realizes that when vengeance consumes you, like it does with Stark, like it does with Zemo, like it does with
that's the whole person. That's like one of the biggest themes of the movie. It's about loss and about
right. So he realizes that true justice comes from justice, like he's going to face justice the right way, the government way, and that becomes the difference between avenging and vengeance.
Mm-hmm. By the way, really quick, that scene towards the end between Black Panther and Baron Zemo on the mountaintop, I think it's one of the top 5 scenes of the whole movie. It's just the way they juxtapose it with the fight between Iron Man and Captain America, the music, everything, like the lines, yes. It speaks a lot to the volumes of the emotions in this movie.
I feel I admittedly I'm not a big fan of Black Panther, so he wasn't like
me either.
A huge draw for me going into the film. But we see this character get introduced, and like you said, it's kind of vague of how his powers work, or if he has powers, or what's going on there. But what the film did do was get me excited for a Black Panther movie.
Which is being directed by a great director. It's got Michael B. Jordan and Lupita Nyong'o now.
Yes.
Yeah, he directed Creed, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Great movie. But I really like just the idea of Black Panther, especially how the end credit scene ends. It really fuels the idea of what Black Panther can be. And I feel like another character that was introduced, we know a lot more about. So that's why it seems like he.
Can we get into it?
Yeah, let's get. I guess we get into little Tom Holland.
Everybody's been waiting to hear about Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Yep.
Sorry.
Hold on. Spider-Man's in this movie. Spider-Man's in this movie.
Not only is he in this movie, he has a way bigger role than most people anticipated him having. So it was sort of. Subverted my expectations a little bit because I thought he was just going to have something of a cameo role.
Well, you could arguably take him out of the movie. You could take his scenes out, and it wouldn't take away from the movie. But at the same time, having the scenes there also does add to the movie for Tony Stark and for Spider-Man.
I agree, definitely, because you definitely don't need Spider-Man. Thankfully, he is in this movie because, like you said, he is one of the best parts. And you could also argue that Ant-Man doesn't even belong in this movie.
He doesn't?
Well,
he does.
He does.
He's like the biggest thing in this movie.
Literally.
Wow, that was subtle.
That was
subtle. I like
not
that.
even close to subtle.
But yes, I would argue Spider-Man and Ant-Man are probably the best elements, one of the best elements in the movie, especially in terms of comedic relief. And you don't need them essentially, but the fact that they're there makes it so much better.
Well, I want to say, are we going to get a Tony Stark Aunt May relationship in Homecoming?
Oh, I hope so.
Is this like her rebound for Uncle Ben? Is this what this is?
Well, in the comics, now I'm the comic book guy, so in the comics, the character of Jarvis, who in the movies was a robot,
and then he turns to Vision.
Yeah, who turns to Vision. However, in the comic books, he's a real person. He's Tony Stark's butler, and ends up dating Aunt May in the comic books. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that the reason they made Aunt May Marissa Tomei, who is a far younger and more attractive Aunt May than is portrayed in the comic books. It's not out of the question that they might push a relationship there.
Well, he's already kind of the father figure to Peter Parker now.
Exactly.
He gave him a suit. He had a nice long talk with him in his room. He's
already
doing the essential father things.
He definitely plays a paternal role for Peter in the movie, and then also they sort of connect on in terms of their motivation when Peter starts to touch on why he does what he does. Tony Stark sort of understands and commiserates with him. So I think that it wouldn't be out of the question for that relationship to be pushed further. So time will tell.
Question to the biggest Spider-Man fan in the room.
Who's that?
That would be you. But
I didn't know that.
Did you?
Me neither.
Where would you rank Tom Holland in the Spider-Mans that you've seen so far?
Well,
in the movie universes.
Coming right out of the movie, I would be like, he's the best Spider-Man ever. But upon reflection, he was only in 2 critical scenes. There's only 2 scenes versus 2 Amazing Spider-Man movies and versus 3 regular Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. I still think Tobey Maguire is the best that we've ever had. He balanced that awkwardness and the charm when he was in the Spider-Man suit. And he had, I think Spider-Man 2 is one of the best superhero movies ever made, because it balances that Peter Parker aspect of his life so well. But I think if Homecoming matches the quality of those 2 scenes of Spider-Man and Peter Parker in Civil War, we have something special on our hands. Like, I am really excited for what's in store for this character.
I definitely agree with you in that.
Also,
regard.
Kraven the Hunter.
Kraven the Hunter.
Bring him into this movie. Or Mysterio.
Vulture.
Well, that's what they're saying right now.
Michael Keaton. Oh wait, that's not a thing anymore.
No, it's not.
But I have to agree with your sentiments on Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire will always have a soft place in my heart because he was the first Spider-Man, and he plays a very nice Peter Parker, who's an obviously generic nerd. Then you had Andrew Garfield, who was like a hipster, basically.
He's an Abercrombie model.
Yeah, he was way too good looking for me to feel
Nothing
bad
wrong
for
with
the
that.
guy. Yeah, but they tried to make him kind of nerdy and an outcast. I'm like, you're too good looking. Like, why are you having issues socially? I don't know. But like you said,
Emma Stone comes to him.
I know.
Like,
and
how does
he
that
takes
work?
pictures of him. It's really creepy. I wouldn't find that endearing, but whatever. We could talk about the movie another time.
Another time.
But like you said, yeah, that could be a whole other thing, all about Spider-Man. But like you said, we need to see more. And similar to Black Panther, I'm super excited for Homecoming because I was a little exhausted with all the Spider-Man reboots. I was like, do we really need another Spider-Man? And now I'm super anticipating that.
Yeah. Maybe unpopular opinion here.
What are you about to say?
Don't really love Tobey Maguire. Just I don't. Was
Team Cap.
I know. I'm
Team Cap.
just
Not a fan of Tobey Maguire.
I'm just I'm a disgusting person. But anyway, so I think Tobey Maguire.
You're like the Kurt Angle of
Tobey Maguire was
podcast,
not
right?
miscast as Peter Parker. However, I just think that I don't like Tobey Maguire as an actor. I just don't think that he.
I see what you're saying. No, I can't disagree with what you're saying.
I haven't liked Tobey Maguire in any movie he's ever played.
He makes the same face in every movie.
Yes, he does. But I think that Tom Holland does a phenomenal job of really grasping the comic book Spider-Man, which is what these directors seem to have been trying to do since since it started. But I think they did a really good job of grasping where Spider-Man's character is supposed to be.
You got distracted by cookies.
So.
Sorry for that break. If you're watching this on SoundCloud, we're just chewing on cookies.
Hold on, this cookie. But I think they really grasped the character well, and I think that we have really a loyal to the original content Spider-Man who can now emote through the mask. Doesn't have to peel the mask off to show an emotion, and who really gets the character. And I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe will really do the character justice.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we're gonna get more casting news about Spider-Man. Like they're filming in literally less than a month, so we gotta get. If they're not gonna tell us everything, they gotta tell us some more about what's going on with these characters. Well, I guess we can get into we're over half an hour into this podcast now. I think we've been leading to it. It's kind of like the movie does. There's a bunch of fight scenes and a bunch of action sequences in this movie, but the biggest one, arguably, literally and figuratively, is the middle fight. The airport fight that lasts I think it's approximately 17 minutes from full, and you get the majority of our characters minus Thor and Hulk because let's be honest here, if Thor and Hulk were in that fight, it would have been a lot different. It would have played out a lot differently, and I think people might have actually died as opposed to just Rhodes just becoming paralyzed, which is still pretty bad.
That was pretty powerful though. Like that whole scene where Rhodes falls out of the sky and sort of gets very badly.
The impact when he hits the floor, it's just insane.
Yeah, that was a good scene, and they did a really good job of adding yet more emotional weight to Tony Stark's predicament.
Mm-hmm. Poor Tony in this movie.
And I'm one of those advocates that thinks Marvel needs to kill their characters, and
they're gonna kill them in Infinity Wars.
Yeah, I know
a lot of them.
Hopefully, but we have Rhodes falling to his presumed death. And I was like, oh, he's dead, that's it. But he's paralyzed. But looking at it, his death doesn't do really anything for the plot. If he died there, it doesn't really motivate Iron Man in any way. It will upset him. And honestly, it might have made him not want to go out and pursue Cap and try to help him.
No, it wouldn't have pushed him over the edge. It would have pushed him over the edge more than him just having a heartbeat, I think. It would. You can argue either way. Right.
I didn't think he was going to die because they show it in the trailer. they show things in the trailer usually.
Goddamn blockbuster movie trailers spoiling everything.
So I didn't think it was
this podcast.
they were gonna kill. But
Shush, people don't know that.
But yeah, that fight was great. I think that every character that needed to interact with one another did a great job. I think that Spider-Man served as the comic relief on his team, and Ant-Man served as the comic relief on his team.
I'm just trying to impress Mr. Stark.
I thought that was a water truck.
Your shield, Captain America.
I believe this belongs to you.
Yeah. So no, I mean that fight was great, and it was just kind of everything like that culminated Civil War. That was everything people wanted. I think that it played out phenomenally well. I was glued to the screen the whole fight.
Does anybody have like favorite moments of that fight, particularly favorite characters interacting, favorite lines? Or
I did like the Spider-Man and Cap interaction where they kind of like connected on like being from New York, Queens, and Brooklyn.
Yeah, that was nice. That was a nice touch.
I hit home for all of us.
I also like when Ant-Man goes inside the suit. So he's like, "I'm your conscience."
We don't talk much these days.
So yeah, that was it was a really good fight, and I really enjoyed the fact that it both had emotional weight, but also some levity and comedy to it. And I think that was important. Carried out exceptionally well.
You have when Bucky and Falcon are fighting.
I love Bucky and Falcon.
They make.
I hate you.
I love that they don't like each other.
Well, you know why? You know why?
Yeah.
But, like they have the bouncing relationship. Like even bounce back really quick when Steve kisses Sharon, and they're both in the back. They're both standing there like this, like.
I love that.
I also love when they're in the little car, and he's like, "Can you move the seat up?"
No.
No. That was so funny. Yeah, no, but that was their interactions are great. I love it because they're both the sidekick, so they're both like kind of like at odds with each other.
But they're fighting.
But they're on the same side, yeah.
But they're also fighting this pain in the ass kid who like he's just trying to do what he has to do, but he doesn't shut up ever. Well, that's what Spider-Man is. But like they're like, kid, there's not this much talking when we fight. Oh, my bad. Sorry.
The only very slight issue I had. Vision doesn't show up till towards the end, which makes sense.
They're holding him back on purpose.
Yeah, because Vision is overpowered. But when he shows up, I don't feel like he does that much. Like, he shows up, and you see them fly towards each other, and the next time you see Vision is when he's stopping Cap and Bucky from running into the hangar.
So you're saying he was just floating around, just twiddling his thumbs?
The thing about Vision is that his purpose in the movie was to point out that the Mind Stone, despite the fact that he doesn't understand it or what it does, has allowed him to experience emotions that are human, despite the fact that he's something of an android.
Mm-hmm.
And because Scarlet Witch was created, her powers come from the Mind Stone, they connect, and Vision presumably is falling in love with Scarlet Witch. And that sort of...
I wonder how that works, by the way, but that's just
we're not going to get into the logistics of that just now. But what I think the point there is that Vision who physically is their most valuable, asset, is also, he is far too emotionally invested in Scarlet Witch to really be fighting at his full potential, and that sort of distraction is what created the incident that shot Rhodes out of the sky, because he was distracted, that whole plot point ensued, and the movie does a really good job of subtly illustrating the fact that he is falling in love, even though he's a robot. He doesn't understand because he is a robot.
I'm just guessing they're gonna something's gonna happen in the next movie, and they're gonna kill him because Thanos is gonna take that gem and be like, nope. F you.
That's literally how part 1's gonna end, or whatever they changed the name to.
People better die, though. People better die.
That's what they should call it. Avengers. People better die. That's what.
No more fake outs.
No more fake outs.
But yeah, we still haven't talked about the biggest part of the airport scene, guys.
What?
The big thing.
The big thing.
The big part.
The huge thing.
The huge thing. The gigantic thing.
The friend that was
the
huge.
50-foot woman. I mean,
Ant-Man grows really big.
Oh yeah, that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we finally see Giant Man, which is just Ant-Man figure.
Go figure.
Go figure. Yeah. So we see that, and it's great because he gets big and he starts becoming really a real problem until Spider-Man, in a very Empire Strikes Back fashion, takes out.
Literally points it out.
Yeah, no, he says.
You know that really old movie? How old is this kid?
I don't know.
So.
But I really like just his face when he finally gets big. Is just like makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Such a good moment, though. But the biggest thing that I liked about that fight is you have Black Widow's turn, which I wouldn't call a turn, but in looking at the teams, Black Widow is definitely the one that I'm like, why is she on Iron Man's team? That makes like the least sense. And I liked how she was the person that helps Cap get away.
They kind of set it up in the funeral when they didn't want you to be alone. Like they kind of set it up that she has affection for him or compassion.
She's always been, she's never fully been loyal to any one person or one allegiance.
But her and Cap have like a brother-sister relationship.
They definitely have. She has the least emotional reason to be on any one side. So it's no surprise that she's sort of there playing the double agent that she always is.
Should we get into Lex Luthor? I mean, Zemo.
Well, I think we could. No, I'm not going to get into it because it gets controversial there. Yeah. But all right. I'm in the camp that like Baron Zemo. I like what they were going for. I think they executed it pretty well. There are some conveniences in his execution of just like what he had to make the characters do. Yeah, but I think in the end, I think his character was one of the better villains that we've had in these Marvel movies, and I do think if they continue his character, they could do. There's a lot more room for him to grow. But the guy with the Daniel Bruhl, he's a great actor. Like, and they didn't give him a lot to do with the range of his, like, because he's a fantastic actor. But what they gave him to do, I thought was pretty solid.
Marvel has notoriously had an arguably weak cast of villains. We have like Ronan the Accuser and Yellow Jacket, who were sort of bland villains, just evil because they're evil kind of people. But Baron Zemo is, I looked at him less as a villain and more as a plot device. And I think that's why I was able to consolidate his character. Because, he doesn't really play the role of a villain. He more plays the role of sort of a puppeteer, like a puppeteer,
he's very, very clearly motivated by...
Right, he personifies the obsessive vengeance that is one of the prevailing themes of the movie. But he also pushes the plot forward in that he creates an antagonist out of Tony Stark instead of being the antagonist himself. And I think that's the point. I don't think that he's there as the villain. I think he's there to push the plot where it
people automatically label him as a villain because he's Baron Zemo.
Right, because...
if he was just some Joe Schmo who came from Sokovia because his family died, it would...
You know what the thing is? The thing about that is that when people did the same thing in Iron Man 3 when the Mandarin didn't turn out to be the Mandarin from the comic book.
The spoilers for Iron Man 3.
Wait, we're getting those spoilers now.
I think that if you look at the comic books as more of a loose guideline of where the plot needs to go, and less so than a strict script with like no creative, I get angry at people who are like that because people are like, oh, that's not how it was in the comic books. No, but like, okay,
I like your voice.
Okay, it's good because like, all right. No, it's not because these are writers who are writing and doing their own interpretations on it. It's not.
Yeah, right. They're doing they're following guidelines, like you said, but they're also trying to make a clear path.
They're trying to create something from something else, and if you don't divert from the plot of these comic books, if you don't make characters into what they need to be to translate over to the big screen, then what's the point of being a director or a writer? It's better to.
It's about balance. There's a way of you to balance fan service and also stay true to the character, but you can also you could do like staying true to the character. You could go different directions.
Sure, but Baron Zemo, I think they did a good job. He did what he needed to be. He served the purpose he needed to serve for the movie to take its course. And if you like the movie for what it is, then you shouldn't be outraged that the character isn't what he is in the comic books. It's just that's my opinion on it.
So do you guys think? All right, we were talking about this before, but we haven't.
I just want to touch on my Zemo theory that I have.
Oh yeah, I guess I was getting to this, but go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry about that.
No.
I have a theory that this isn't really Baron Zemo, because in the film, they never mention him by name as Baron Zemo. The only time they mention his name, they call him Helmet Zemo.
Oh, yeah.
And when they walk into the room with all of the super soldiers, as it were, they say that there's 5 of them, and Iron Man walks in and sees that there's a heat signature, and there's like, I read 1 heat signature, and Zemo says that he killed all the super soldiers, but they cut to only 4 of them dead, and
I think
the reason that
Bucky's the 5th.
Yeah, but because Zemo isn't a super soldier, he's just a regular military leader, right?
I feel like, because in the flashbacks they make a point that there's the one guy that like bugs out and like starts that whole issue with the super soldiers.
But one of them looked like Henry Cavill.
He did. No,
the one they do a close up on when they're.
My brother was like, "Is that Superman?" I'm like, "No," but I see where you're coming from. So I feel like there's one super soldier still alive, and that's the Baron Zemo that we know from the comic books. But it's just a theory.
Well, I mean, I do think he's going to come back. This is the Daniel Bruhl. I think he's coming back in some shape or form. Even though Thanos is going to take the spotlight, I think that this is the character besides Loki who has the most potential to come back and actually do something. Because he's still motivated. Is he?
There's even
though Black Panther kind of stops him.
But he didn't change his ideology, and I also think he has the potential. If the plot needed to, he could, he could become a super soldier in some way, and then he could be the Baron Zemo, whatever.
He put on his little purple hood.
Yeah. So
Where's the purple hood?
So I think that I think that it's anything can happen. I think that it's sort of a wait and see kind of thing, and I don't think it's anything that needs to be looked into any deeper than it is in this movie until more movies call for that.
Sure. But we still haven't talked about the big fight either. The Iron Man versus Cap versus Bucky.
I touched on that, but
well, we can talk about it more, can we?
Yeah, sure. I would love to.
I really thought Cap was going to kill Iron Man at one point. When he bangs his head, he lifts that shield up and like he's going to decapitate him right now.
But he had to decapitate him. That would have been awfully brutal.
That would have been obnoxious.
You see, like this movie certainly has like a Mortal Kombat vibe to it, and like fatality.
But yeah, so I don't think I don't think he was gonna do it, but they definitely alluded to that possibility.
I'm surprised Bucky didn't die. I thought Bucky was gonna die. Like I know his arm came off, but I thought it was gonna be much more than that.
I thought a character was gonna die. I thought it was gonna be Captain America. I really did, but I guess they didn't go through with it. That being said, I wasn't disappointed. The fight, all that bottling up rage between the tension between the two characters, it was all mounting, and finally Stark finds out that Captain America's best friend killed his parents, and that he was withholding that information, and he saw that as the ultimate betrayal, and he went in, he tried to kill Bucky, he tried to kick the shit out of Captain America, but the ultimately the takeaway from that is that he is dangerous without his ego, and that's what I saw. That's what I took away from that. That being said, though, whenever he was fighting any one of the, Captain America or Bucky, whenever he got any one-on-one combat with either of them, he usually had the advantage. But when they both worked together, they started to overpower him. Yeah. And so I think the idea is that while Iron Man is sort of a lone wolf as a character, with Captain America's friendship with Bucky overpowers his lone wolf way of fighting. And
in that case, yeah, for sure.
And I think that's the only reason he loses the fight is because he, one, the movie is Captain America, and two, he loses because he's 1-on-2, and as strong as he is and as angry as he is and how dangerous he is when he's fighting with everything he's got, he is one person and they are two super soldiers. Yeah. So.
You could argue too at the idea of Captain America just dropping his shield and letting it go. It's also a very powerful moment too. Even though he's probably gonna get a new shield if he has to from Wakanda, the idea of like Tony like being it doesn't belong to you. And just Cap's like, yeah, you're right. Like you're right.
Because Captain America sort of betrayed the idea. Like he betrayed Howard by defending the man who killed him, and he knows that. So to own the shield that he made, he knows is sort of a betrayal to Tony and Howard. So he leaves the shield behind. But I think ultimately he will get it back when Tony feels that he's earned it. As in
Earned it.
You know what I mean? Like when he does something, obviously at the end of the movie we see some reconciliation in that sort of Tony allows Captain America to break out his friends by ignoring the phone call from Ross when they're doing the breakout in the prison.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of shows that Stark has sort of at some level has sort of forgiven him.
They're broken, but
they're broken, but they understand their differences.
Yeah.
And so I think that at some point they will there's going to be some form of redemption in Stark's eyes for Rogers, in which that he'll get the shield back. Probably in Infinity War.
Yeah.
The only thing that about that fight was you had the moment where Iron Man's like, "Did you know?" and then Cap knows, but it's never really established how he finds out. Again, that takes away the reveal.
How Captain America knew?
Yeah, of how Captain America knew.
Well, they don't say it in the movie, but I guess you could say Winter Soldier when they're talking to Armin Zola.
Oh yeah, in that moment, I guess so.
But that was he was related to Zola, that guy.
Who's that guy?
Oh, you're talking about Winter Soldier.
Yeah, when they're in the little bunker and then he's revealing all the information.
Computer,
yeah.
That's when they show that he killed his parents. That was the.
They don't say it directly. They don't say it directly, but you get the implication that the soldier killed them.
They showed the newspaper.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of just the action, obviously the middle scene and the ending scenes are amazing and impeccable. Did you guys feel that first sequence was a little choppy and a little too shaky cam?
The first time, sure. The second time, I accepted it more because I liked what he was trying to do. He was trying to set up the idea that the new Avengers, they were fighting and they were doing what they had to do, fight crime.
The Russo brothers. I'm sorry, cut you off.
No, I was good.
The Russo brothers' style is very loose camera. They were like that in Winter Soldier too. Everything was very loose, nothing tight. All their action was sort of masked, and it sort of gives the feeling of power and speed. And it's a powerful cinematography, method. And it was a little jarring. I agree with you, but I liked it. I did enjoy it.
The camera work got better as the movie progressed.
Yeah.
And then the second after that, we got the fight scene where Bucky and Cap are in the stairwell.
I love that.
Which it was a little shaky cam on that too, but that was
bit, but I feel like it was
the first scene was definitely the shakiest. I agree with you.
Because then after that, we get the chase scene, which is a little bit shaky too, but slightly bit more focus. And then the airport scene is just clear focus, still frame shots.
Because there's a lot of CGI in there too. That's
that. Spider-Man, I think Spider-Man was full CGI.
Yeah.
In that
I think that was the first scene that they shot was the airport scene, and then
it took them. I read an interview. It took them 2 years to make that scene. They constantly went back to it to refine it.
Obviously.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, no, that last, that whole culmination of that plot was great. And now Black Panther is sort of harboring Captain America, and and Bucky puts himself back under in order to, before, he can be used as a weapon again. So they're kind of putting him under until they kind of find a way to cure him.
Was his arm made of vibranium? How was he able to blow it off? That annoyed me a little bit.
They never say it was made of vibranium.
No,
Bucky's arm?
Yeah.
Yeah, they never clearly say what it's made of specifically.
It's just a metal arm.
And Hydra had some kind of technology.
But the arc reactor is the most powerful. The center blast is the most powerful one he has. So that doesn't. It's no surprise that it took off the metal arm.
They could give him a vibranium one though. Now that he's in Wakanda.
Now they're in Wakanda. Yeah, they might actually do that.
Do you think he's gonna come back for Infinity War, or they're gonna keep him?
He's gonna come back.
Yeah, I think he'll come back in Black Panther.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I feel like they would want to keep more focus on.
I think Black Panther is gonna be just Black Panther. I don't think they're gonna have.
Well, maybe as an end credit scene.
Sure, yeah, maybe an end credit thing, but not during the actual. The story's not gonna center around.
But I feel like that might bring a villain to Wakanda when they find out.
Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
Andy Serkis is already in Wakanda.
Yeah, that's true.
Is he? Oh, okay.
Because I feel like
Age of Ultron.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. Because I feel like in the Black Panther movie, we might have a similar situation with Crossbones and Ulysses Claw, where.
Wait, but isn't Crossbones dead?
Well, no. I'm we had the opening fight scene with
Oh, yeah, right,
I think
right,
we'll have
right.
something similar with Ulysses Core.
Okay.
And then there'll be another villain.
The thing is, with Crossbones, there was already a motivating reason for them to be fighting, whereas Claw and Black Panther, we haven't really established what would put them at odds. So I don't think it would start with any kind of combat sequence. I think that would be a kind of conflict that would mount throughout the movie.
I can agree.
Well, they're also saying Michael B. Jordan might be the villain too, which I don't know. I have no idea who the rogue gallery of Black Panther or whatever, but already I'm sold on the idea of him being an
I like that he's in it too. I think that the cast is going to be good. I'm going to like the direction. I'm very excited to see what they do.
Yeah, Spider-Man. What have we talked about yet? We talked about everything.
Yeah, I think
we tackled everything.
Do you think anything in Infinity War is going to be, because they're saying there's an underlying factor in Civil War that's really going to impact the Infinity War movies? Do
I think that
know what that is?
the Mind Stone. I think Vision and the Mind Stone, and his love for Scarlet Witch. I think that's going to be the main thing that connects into.
So you think they're undermining it in this movie, but it's going to play a big factor in the next movie?
Yeah, because I think that he was talking about how he seeks to understand the stone and blah 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 blah, and I think that in some way will play into Infinity War,
right?
And the understanding of maybe Thanos won't understand how to use the stones; he'll just have the power, whereas Vision, understood it. There might be some kind of conflict with that.
Yeah. I can totally see it. They've set it up enough where you can care now if they do go about that storyline.
But it's actually, we covered all the ground we needed to cover, and it's 4:56, which is pretty.
Ooh. Well, I do want to say one more thing. Do you have a ranking in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for this movie? Do you have a clear
I do.
place for them?
Number 2. He's
Number
got
2?
my number 2 spot.
What's number 1?
Number 1 is Winter Soldier. Number 2 is this. Number 3 is Iron Man. That's my number 4 is Guardians. Sure. I can keep going.
I'd argue that it is number 3 for me. I think obviously Winter Soldier is a slightly superior film than Guardians of the Galaxy, just for the sheer fact of how it surprised me and how much I enjoyed it. And then you have Civil War right underneath that. I think it surpasses Avengers by a pretty long shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would put Winter Soldier first too, because I think it's the most well-made movie of all the bunch. Then I would put Civil War second, Avengers third, and then Guardians of the Galaxy will come after that.
The first Avengers is a classic, and it's definitely in my top 5. The second Avengers doesn't even make the top 8, and I don't think it's a bad movie.
It's a very forgettable movie.
I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think that it falls victim to the sin of trying to set up other movies, and so it takes away from the Iron Man 2 does it too. Trying to set up a movie,
That's part
supposed to be of things that lead up to it, and it shouldn't be their main IP to lead up to Civil War, which is what it did. And Civil War was a great movie because it wasn't trying to set anything else. And that's
it does. It does set things up, but it doesn't interfere with.
It's not like in Iron Man 2. I mean, literally, Iron Man 2 just like Avengers, which I think was Iron Man 2.
Yes.
The Russo brothers, I think they have a better idea of where they're going with this universe now. And the thing was the end of the big, they've been culminating over 8 years. I think good end this thing. And anytime soon, probably a lot more Black Panther movies, Spider-Man movies if we're going into this whole thing. But they definitely have something they have people who really care about these characters and are capable of making good movies in their arsenal now.
100%, and I think we're going to see a major roster change after Infinity War. I think
Probably.
some characters will stay, like long-term investments, like Tom Holland will probably be around for a while.
The kid's 19 years old.
I think Chris Evans, I think Robert Downey Jr.
Do you think they're going to kill Iron Man or Cap?
I think they might. I don't know that they'll stay dead, and I don't know that they won't just, retire them. They can do that too.
But for the sake of story, if they had to actually kill somebody permanently, if we don't know the opposite, they might not.
If they were going to kill somebody, it would probably be Captain America, and I think that's
Or Falcon.
I heard a rumor a few years back that they're going to replace Iron Man with the kid from Iron Man 3. Like he's going to become the next Iron Man. I don't know if that's holds water for me, but it's plausible.
It's an idea.
Because by the time Infinity Wars is over, that kid will have been pretty old.
But I mean, the Marvel's planted so many seeds that they could go in as many directions as they make for themselves, and they have a lot of directions they could go in potentially if they. I'm sure they're discussing it right now. I'm sure like the Russo brothers,
At this moment, right?
Kevin Feige, they're all in a room. They're like, "What are we gonna do?" People are having podcasts about this right now. We gotta figure out what we're doing.
Well, I'm very eager to find out where they go with it.
The only thing that like makes me nervous is that it's hard to make consistent movies that are good year after year, and the Russo brothers have made 2 really good movies. Can they catch lightning in a bottle again for
Absolutely.
two more movies?
Cross fingers.
Ugh.
See, the thing is, Joss Whedon is a TV writer, and I think that
So were the Russo brothers, though.
Yeah, Joss Whedon's writing shined in Avengers 1 because it didn't really. It was the first movie where they all came together, and it was just you're having so much fun with that you don't really need. Joss Whedon tried something new at Age of Ultron, where first of all he was stuck in being forced to set up another movie, and 2. He was trying to add too much character development in a movie that really is just should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Civil War kind of is allowed to take more character development liberties because it's Civil War and it's not the Avengers. And Joss Whedon got a lot of flack for that. I don't think it's really his fault, but I think the Russo brothers will do a little more justice with the IP than he did, unfortunately, for him.
They seem to be loving what they're doing. They don't seem to be exhausted like Joss Whedon was. They seem to have like a clear love for these movies, and they want to do the fans right, and we're in good hands. So also we are over an hour. Holy moly! But this was.
I think we've covered everything we need to cover.
But yeah, I guess we'll just wrap things up. If you're watching live, if you're watching on SoundCloud at home at like a week from now, tomorrow. Whatever. Thank you so much for listening to us, and everybody who came out to Comic Book Jones. Thank you for listening to us as well, and also thank you to Comic Book Jones for letting us do this again because this is really really cool, and I'm glad I got to do this for you guys and have everybody listen to us. Everybody who's still here, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So shameless plug time. So
Yeah.
you, Mike.
This was a great experience. I had a lot of fun talking with you guys about this. I thought everyone made some great points. It's a lot of fun to be here. Again, special thanks to Comic Book Jones for letting us do this. Thank you all for coming out, and give yourselves a round of applause here.
And I'm John Anderson. You can find me at Facebook at John Ryan Anderson or on Instagram and Twitter at The Comic Look. And that is also my YouTube channel, The Comic Look. Again, thanks to Comic Book Jones. Sako, I'm looking at you. Thank you for letting this happen.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome. And great. It's always great talking with you guys about stupid comic book stuff.
So stupid.
So yeah, I've been Mike Potenza from thecleverconception.com/cleverconceptions.
And I'm John Maffeo. You can follow me on Maffman Jones on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make YouTube movie reviews. And this is also the Maffman Jones Movie Podcast. You can find it on SoundCloud and hopefully on YouTube as well. Again, I want to thank everybody here. And this is the Maffman Jones Movie Podcast signing off.
Okay, bye.
Boom. Boom, baby.